Today I want to talk about translated Japanese fiction. I'm not going to talk about every translated Japanese book that I've read. I always read murder mysteries, and there isn't really much to talk about unless I were to entirely give the plot away. So for the first half of this video, I'm going to talk about books that I considered very funny. For the second half of the video, I'm going to talk about books that I considered horror. But it's not like ghosts, zombies, or serial killing, not that kind. Different kind of horror. The genre of horror has expanded quite a bit if we were to compare it to 30 years ago. The first book is Quicksand by Junichiro Tanizaki. This book was recommended to me by a colleague. I didn't realize that it was published so long ago, the late 1920s, so that's like 100 years ago. And I think it's really funny how this book is considered a classic just because it is old. But if you look at the content of the book, it's really not out of place in 2025. The human desire for gossip and scandal is quite persistent. So the story is told through a woman's confession to her friend, the narrator. And the narrator is low-key judging her 100% of the time from start to end. So you as the reader, you are also invited to kind of judge her. So the main character here, the woman in question, is called Sonoko. She is a married woman in her 20s. Back then people, they just got married because their parents decided it. So it was an arranged marriage. It wasn't like a love marriage or anything. Her husband is like piece of furniture to her. She had an affair already. She doesn't exactly love her husband or desire him that much. Their marriage survived because that was the default. She attends a university where she learns how to paint and draw. So they do live painting. And she falls madly in love, or maybe in lust, with this super duper hot and gorgeous classmate of hers called Mitsuko. And Mitsuko is a year younger than her, early to mid 20s. Mitsuko is unmarried. Everybody knew that Sonoko was in love with Mitsuko because she couldn't keep it in her pants. When she was doing live drawing of another model, she would end up drawing Mitsuko. Sonoko and Mitsuko, they end up becoming friends. They will go out shopping together, they will hang out. We need to remember that this is like an unreliable narrator. It's a woman who is telling her story after the fact. The feeling that I got was that it was more of a mutual seduction thing. They are interested in each other. So Mitsuko, she goes to Sonoko's house during the day when the husband is out. They do live drawing in the nude, in the master bedroom, on the bed. As expected, it devolves into ripping off clothes, having sex, and then they started their affair. Just when Sonoko thinks that she's deceiving her husband, she finds out that Mitsuko actually has like a side piece, a boyfriend on the side. She spirals. She thought that she was the only one in Mitsuko's life, which is very ironic coming from a married woman. Her husband then finds out. Because she's so heartbroken, she swears off Mitsuko and she swears to be loyal to her husband. That lasted a few months. Mitsuko, she fabricates a pregnancy scare to try to get back with Sonoko. I think at this point you can kind of tell that Sonoko doesn't have much self-control. She does agree to be with Mitsuko again. She accepts the fact that Mitsuko has a boyfriend. It's not exactly like a threesome. I can't even call them a throuple because Sonoko and the boyfriend are not together in any way or form. The boyfriend, on the other hand, he turns out to be a total psycho. He tried to get Sonoko to sign a blood pact. So like you cut your hand and then you bleed onto the paper. And the blood pact has so many rules, and the whole point of this blood pact is to make sure that only the two of them will have access to Mitsuko. The boyfriend here cannot be trusted. He actually tried to expose their arrangement to her husband. The end goal seems to be to get the husband to get Sonoko in mind so that he can have Mitsuko all to himself. So he's backstabbing Sonoko over here. The husband, he really didn't like the boyfriend. He felt that he was very slimy. He just had really bad vibes. So instead of siding with the boyfriend, he sided with his wife. He teamed up with his wife and Mitsuko to kick out the boyfriend. They ended up as like a legitimate throuple. But then Mitsuko's former maid, who got unfairly dismissed from her position, went to the newspaper to air out all of her business. Because their reputations are now destroyed, there is only one solution, which is a love suicide. The love suicide is the solution to everything. So Mitsuko, she prepares the poison. The end goal is that the three of them would lie in bed and then they would drink the poison and then they will go to sleep and then they will die together. But it didn't work out that way. For some reason, Sonoko managed to survive and wake up. And when she woke up, she found her husband and Mitsuko Mitsuko did. In the end, only the two of them managed to commit the love suicide together. She's like thinking, did I get tricked? Was she just trying to steal my husband? I really couldn't believe that it was a classic. It's so ridiculous. If right now somebody tried to publish a story like this, I'm not sure it would even pass the sensitivity readers. It's a little bit like biphobic, and the plotline is really quite ridiculous. If we use the language of today, this is a book that is considered problematic. But I love it. It's an old book, so it's definitely going to have its problems. I do love the mess and the drama. So the most interesting thing in this book to me was how both Sonoko and Mitsuko, they insisted that their love for each other is completely separate from their love for the men in their lives. They are not even on the same level. Maybe it's just something that they say to justify cheating, but maybe he's trying to say that this kind of relationship doesn't have a place in society. There is no comparison. It is incomparable, irreplaceable, incommensurate. For the women here, it's not that they don't love the men in their lives, but their relationship with the man takes a backseat to their relationship with each other. That was the feeling that I got. The second book that I want to talk about that I found really funny is Nipponia Nippon by Kazushige Abe. This is the second book of his that I have read, the first being Mysterious Setting, which is quite different in terms of theme and approach. Nipponia Nippon made me laugh out loud. It reminded me a little bit of Rejection by Tony Tulaitimat because it brings you into the mind of an incel who really wants to get laid, but he can't, so then he decides to turn to murder. It seems like the phenomenon is not confined to the West. So this protagonist, he's supposed to be studying for his exams, but instead he's spending all his time researching some endangered birds with the official scientific name Nipponia Nippon because he feels some affinity with them due to his surname. He's a very delusional young man. He believes that because of his special surname, he is thus destined for greatness. It's not surprising that he has like 0 friends, 0 girls in his life. He has an extremely off-putting personality. So in school, he will start talking about how special his surname is, and everybody's just like, honestly, I feel really bad for his parents. He keeps blackmailing them for money. He also got sent away to live by himself away from his hometown because he started stalking a girl from his school who spoke to him once many years ago, and he became obsessed with her. He broke into her house, he read her diaries. When her parents tried to chase him away, he didn't give up. Because he over-identifies with the endangered birds, he becomes very angry when he finds out that they are having sex. To himself, he justifies his anger by saying that he didn't expect them to give in to the government's demands. But honestly, it's very clear that he's just jealous of them. So he comes up with a plan to kill them. He buys weapons online using whatever money he gets from his parents. He even starts to jog every day so that he can improve his fitness. It's a really short story. I'm not gonna spoil the ending for you. And it does sound like a silly story, but you know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Some of the things that he talks about are valid. For example, if the birds are on loan from China, how can their descendants then be considered Japanese birds? Of all the birds to care about because they are at risk of extinction and they are endangered, why is this bird getting special treatment just because of its name, Nipponia Nippon? Which then suggests that this bird is being prioritized because of the obsession with preserving a pure Japanese bloodline, not so much because there is any inherent value in the bird itself. Even if the country wants to save this species because of its name that has ties to the land itself, that's already compromised because the birds are from China. Generally, I kind of like this author's books. It's a good mix of like silly and serious. Next book, Diary of a Void by Miyagi. This is one of my favorites out of the maybe 100 books that I've read this year so far because I found it really very funny and subversive. The protagonist is a woman called Shibata. She is not young but not that old yet, mid-30s. She's an unmarried professional who works in an office. Because she's the only woman there, all the menial time-consuming tasks end up being her responsibility, and she's not getting paid more for it either. It's also apparent that she has been socialized to do these things. Nobody has ever taught her or told her that it's okay to just say no. The problem is that because she has to do all these things on top of her existing workload, it is affecting her productivity, and her bosses don't understand the stuff that she has to do on the side counts as real labor, but she has to do so many other things. And because she cannot finish her work on time, on top of that, the company also has an unspoken rule that everybody has to work overtime. She doesn't get to leave on the clock. Like, her contract says she'll end at this time, but actually she has to work an hour more. By the time she ends work, she has to battle the rush hour. She doesn't get a seat on the train, and then when she gets to the supermarket, all the good stuff is already gone, and she's left with inferior ingredients. And then by the time she gets home, she has virtually no leisure time left, and then she goes to sleep, and the next day she has to get to work again. When I was reading that section, I was like, oh, this is fiction, you know? It doesn't sound like fiction to me. I think there are many people out there who relate. She's so sick and tired of it all. She decides to lie and tell her boss and her colleagues that she is pregnant. Surprise! Immediately, because of her pregnancy, everyone starts treating her with care, so she doesn't have to wash the dirty cups anymore, because she can say that the smell triggers her nausea and someone else will wash the cups instead. She can leave work exactly on time. She can buy fresh groceries for herself. She can cook good meals for herself, and she can also sign up for yoga with other pregnant moms. She ends up having a much higher quality of life. She actually has a life outside of work. There are just all these benefits that she's like making full use of. But the thing is, she's not actually pregnant. As the reader, you know that she's not pregnant. But her body actually shows signs of pregnancy. She gains weight, gets rounder. When she goes to a medical checkup, honestly, I thought she was gonna get caught. I was so scared. But she never did. The doctors just did the ultrasound. Everything was normal. There was a heartbeat. Very strange, right? And then in the end, her water actually broke and she actually gave birth in a hospital. Huh? Was she actually pregnant this whole time? Or was she not? My interpretation is that she is not. This is magical realism. But when she went back to work, she found out that the men in the office somehow managed to figure out how to take care of themselves. So it's not that they couldn't, you know what I mean? They can. When other people ask about her baby, she will show them an influencer's baby's photo, and she's just waiting for them to lose interest in her baby, which will take like 1 or 2 years. And what I really liked about this book, and what I found very subversive, was how it pointed out that women only have value when they are expecting new life. But before and after their pregnancy, they are treated as like less than men. This isn't new information to any of us. If you think about it, it's actually the suffering in pregnancy that gives pregnant women that temporary boost in status. Pregnancy is very hard on the body. You are in pain all the time. It's natural that people would give up their seat for you. It's natural that if you are working, you should be allowed to go home on time and not be saddled with extra tasks because you are already in so much discomfort. That is kind of the understanding that I have. When you are a pregnant woman, you are contributing to the future of the country. You can have certain privileges. But here in this book, Shibata, she gets to experience all of the perks of pregnancy without having to actually do any of the suffering. There's zero suffering on her end. It's almost like she's frauding them, you know? I also noted how the privileges that she wants are very small things. It's not like she's getting rich, you know? It's not like people are giving her millions. She just wants to go home on time, have a reason to hang out with other women. She wants to have time for herself, to watch TV shows. Is that really so bad? Next book, Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa. So this is a new release. I saw it everywhere when I was in Vancouver. The protagonist is a disabled woman in her 40s living in a care facility. She was born with a congenital condition that makes her spine curve when she reached her teenage years. So she had a normal life until she was a teenager, around 14, and then after that her life just went downhill. With each year that passes, her lungs get crushed more and more. She has a hole cut into her throat. There is an official term for it. I'm not going to try to say it. So that air can get into her lungs without her having to rely on, you know, the pipes up here, because they are messed up. Her body is like constantly trying to fight against it, so it will produce a lot of mucus. She has to like suck out the mucus using a machine, or she will literally just suffocate. And she has to do this all the time. Like, it's a constant consideration on her mind. If you read the book, she's never not thinking about the mucus that is building up in her throat. It is an exhausting way to live. So when she goes to sleep, she has to hook herself up to a respirator. This protagonist, her name is Shaka, and she is very aware of her relative privilege compared to other disabled women because she's actually rich. Like, she has generational wealth. In fact, like, she owns the facility. She's able to afford high quality care and safety, and she can even buy very fancy machines like a book scanner that will flip the pages and scan the pages for her. But this doesn't really change how she feels. Envious and resentful, to pass the time, she will attend classes online and she writes smut. I guess you can call it erotica, but when I was reading it, I was like, this is smut. And she takes her smut writing quite seriously, like it's a job to her. And I think it's also the closest that she can get to actually having sex. The book begins with a sample. After the story ended, there is a discussion of the considerations behind writing stories like that. How authors need to be creative when they are trying to convey the sounds that a woman makes during sex, because it's written on paper, right? So you need to use words to convey that. She said that writing repeatedly can get very boring. People have started adding the heart symbol behind their lines to indicate that the character is having sex and enjoying it. So this is an important point. You just bear it in mind first. She soon realizes that one of the people working in the facility, a young man named Tanaka, actually read everything that she posted online. And she posts a lot of things online. Posts like nobody is reading her tweets. So on her Twitter, she said that her dream is to get pregnant and have an abortion. I know it sounds shocking, because who on earth would dream of getting an abortion, right? It's usually one of the most traumatizing experiences a woman can have. But I think for Shaka, she doesn't want the abortion so much as she wants the freedom to do such a thing under normal circumstances. So to other women, having an abortion is like a major inconvenience. But for her, to even be in that situation in the first place is not something that she can access. What she really wants is the ability to behave carelessly and recklessly and then suffer the consequences just like other women. She propositions Tanaka and she offers him money in exchange for a sexual encounter, or perhaps multiple sexual encounters, because she wants to get pregnant to get the abortion. It's like a second prize, you know what I mean? Tanaka does accept the proposition and they do have one sexual encounter, which was highly uncomfortable to read about. It's non-penetrative. She basically just gave him a blowjob. But because, like I said, she already has problems with her upper respiratory tracts, like everything here is problematic for her. She ended up in the ICU, she nearly died. He didn't take the money in the end, he just left it in her room, and he also left the center. He also did ask her, like, was that worth risking your life for? I think it's very difficult to ascertain who is taking advantage of whom, because yeah, it's true that Tanaka here was taking advantage of Shaka's desperation. He could make a quick buck, he could get rich real fast, but in the end he backed out of their deal. Shaka here, I guess you can say she is the conventional victim of her circumstances, but at the same time she also did use her money to coerce Tanaka into prostituting himself. At the end, the story suddenly shifts to what felt like a piece of creative writing. The POV of this short story within this short story is implied that it's like Tanaka's younger sister. She is now a sex worker who specializes in cream pies. If you don't know what that is, you don't need to know what that is. Tanaka's younger sister, the character, is trying to make money because she fell in love with a man working in a host club, so he's also a sex worker, and she needs money to continue to see this guy because he will not see her without her paying. And on top of that, her brother, which is Tanaka, is in prison because in this world, Tanaka went berserk and killed Shaka and tried to run away with her money, but he got caught. On my first read, I thought that this was the true ending of the novel, but when I looked at it again, I started suspecting that this was actually a revenge fiction written by Shaka because she was angry at Tanaka for leaving, depriving her of her opportunity to get pregnant and get an abortion. The hint that I got was when the sister character is having sex with a customer, her lines have the heart, you know, the symbol, which then signaled that this is written, right? It's artifice. My theory is that Shaka wrote this story out of vindictiveness. She resented Tanaka for not allowing himself to be bought. So she fabricated a sister, put him in jail, and then she made the sister a sex worker at risk of getting pregnant to punish him in her imagination. Next book, Someone to Watch Over You by Kumi Kimura. Like Nails and Eyes by Kaori Fujino, this short novel falls under the category of horror because it induces anxiety in the reader. Or maybe that's just me, I felt very unsettled when I was reading this. It's not outright horror, psychological horror, because the reader doesn't have all the information. The story unfolds quite slowly and it alternates between two main characters. So the first main character is a middle-aged woman called Tae. She lives an extremely ascetic lifestyle. Not because she's a spiritual person, but because she wants to save money. She just wants to live off the inheritance that her parents gave her. So years ago, when she was a teacher, one of her students died in a drowning accident. The father of the child didn't believe that it was an accident. Only later on we find out it's probably her fault, because the student actually wrote a letter to her. He accused her of making his life miserable by forcing him to interact with his bullies. That drowning accident, very likely a suicide. She started to get harassed. She takes in a homeless guy and offers him food and shelter to guard her house so that she can feel safe. The second character is this homeless guy. His name is Shinobu. He is technically living with his brother, but the brother has a wife and a daughter, and none of them like him. He was accused of being a pedophile and trying to kidnap a primary school aged child, but he says that it was all a misunderstanding. He also lost all of his money to a love scam, so he is broke. When he was a security guard, he accidentally injured a protester, and the protester later died. So everybody on the internet is like blaming him for killing the protester. But then when you're reading like how he interacts with his niece, right, the way that he looks at her clothing and the way that she kind of taunts him for the way that he's looking at her, there may be some truth in the accusations of him being a pedophile. Tai and Shinobu, they are living together in the same house. Their relationship fails to progress beyond that of two strangers who are just forced to bunk together in close proximity for survival's sake. There is no redemption for either of them. These characters are deeply selfish and self-centered. So even though they are presented with the opportunity to build something, maybe have community, take care of each other for real, they're not capable of working towards that ideal. They squander the opportunity, and they also squander their lives. So this is a depressing book. Makes you feel cold inside. There is no happy ending for them. Next, the Ring trilogy by Koji Suzuki. I'm gonna talk about all three books as a whole. When I was reading it, I found it quite addictive. So in book 1, Ring, this is the super famous one that everyone is familiar with because of that movie, right? To me, her crawling out of the TV is not the scariest part, and it doesn't even exist in the book. When I watched the movie, what I was most spooked and freaked out by was the videotape, the cursed videotape. I had nightmares of the sequence of images used in that cursed videotape. Even though I knew that it was just a made up thing, it was just a horror movie, it's just a movie, my brain couldn't forget that sequence. I think I probably shouldn't have watched it when I was very young. In book 1, there is a cursed videotape. A journalist is investigating the death of his niece. So his niece died with 3 other friends, and they all died at the exact same time. Their hearts stopped at the exact same time. He manages to procure the videotape. He watches it, he gets his friend to watch it, and his friend is a professor. Because he accidentally left the tape at home, his wife and his baby daughter also watched it. Like, how careless can you be, right? Him and the friend then, they have a limited period of time to try to uncover the secret of the videotape in hopes that they can undo the curse and save themselves. They figure out that the videotape wasn't actually filmed with a camera, but it was filmed through someone's eyes because there is blinking, and they were like, hey, this is blinking, so this is actually a psychic imprint of someone's mental state. And eventually they find out that this someone is Sadako, who is a very beautiful but kind of creepy girl, and she was sexually assaulted by a doctor, and then he threw her down a well. They thought that they just needed to bring her bones out, properly bury her, but that was not that. So they find out too late that Sadako's spirit actually cannot be easily appeased. The end goal of the curse is to propagate Sadako. It's kind of like her way of giving birth and her way of taking revenge against the human race that rejected her. Because, surprise, she's a hermaphrodite, so she's actually incapable of giving birth. The curse, infecting other people, is her way of continuing her species. When I read it, I was like, huh? Of course there is a pseudo-scientific explanation for this. So the curse is actually a virus that gets transmitted via the acts of watching the videotape. When time is up, it will produce a boil, a smallpox kind of boil, in the artery to stop the heart. Which is why if you watch the video with a friend, the two of you will die at the exact same time because the boil will show up in your heart at the exact same time. So this journalist, he realizes that his wife and his child are at risk, thinks that he needs to save them by passing on the curse to somebody. At the end of book 1, he is driving all of them to his in-laws' place because he wants to sacrifice the elderly to save his wife and child. So in book 2, we find out that it didn't work. His wife and child died in the car. So the professor that helped him investigate Sadako, he died too. A doctor who is a friend of the dead professor, he did an autopsy and he found that there was code left behind in his stomach and in his DNA. My knowledge of DNA and RNA is not so strong that I can understand what is presented to me. So the doctor also met with the professor's girlfriend. And this girlfriend, she's like beautiful, she's slim. But then later on, she dies. And on top of that, she died in like a chimney. And there is evidence that she gave birth. Like, which doesn't make sense because when the doctor looked at the girlfriend, she was so slim, there is no way she was pregnant. I think it's pretty obvious what she gave birth to lah, right? It's Sadako reincarnated. There was a best-selling book based off a manuscript written by the journalist in book 1, which describes the videotape. The book managed to sell millions of copies. Reading about the sequence of images in the videotape has the same effect as watching the videotape. So everyone is going to die. When Sadako was asked, the end goal seems to be to replace all of human DNA with Sadako to create a Sadako singularity. So that's how book 2 ends. And you thought like, okay, the world is over, what's next? And then there's book 3. In book 3, we are told that everything that happened in book 1 and book 2 is a computer program. Like, this is virtual reality. It's not a ghost story in the end. It's science fiction. So in the real world, there were scientists that wanted to create a virtual reality inside a supercomputer. And it's meant to replicate like the literal birth of life so they can try to predict the future. They ran the program at top speed so that all the boring parts like evolution could be done faster. This program is called Loop. The entities inside Loop are like the Sims, you know, but they don't know that they don't exist. They think that they are real people living in a real world, looking up at a real sky. Every time Sadako wins inside this program, that is the program turning cancerous. In the real world, there is a real cancer that's killing people, it's killing plants, it's taking over the world bit by bit. There is a man who tries to find a cure for his family members. He stumbles upon this computer and he also finds out that actually he is the reincarnation of the professor character who died in book 2. In the computer program, the professor, he was really smart. So he was thinking, how on earth is it possible for a world to exist like this? Like, there is no way that a world could operate on these laws. Somebody watches a videotape, then they get a virus, and then they get a boil in their heart, and then they die within a fixed number of days. That's not possible. The professor, he came to the conclusion that his world is not real. He's living inside a simulation, right? He's inside the matrix. And he made a call to the outside, and he said, I want to go to your world, take me to your world. And they did. They took him to the real world, put his DNA inside an embryo, and that embryo grew up, and now that embryo is the main character of book 3. The man, he also realized that the cancer killing his real world came from the computer program. Now he needs to re-enter Loop to deprogram Sadako and find a cure. So that's the Ring trilogy for you. I don't really know what the author was on to come up with something like this, but I'm very sure that it's not legal in Singapore. The last book, Strange Pictures by Uketsu. So this book went viral before its official release because there was a lot of marketing, like so much marketing. It always makes me wonder, you know, why do some books get so much marketing and then some books you don't even hear about them at all. I do think that when a book is very, very hyped up, there is a tendency to go with the flow and be very lenient when you're reading it. And when it comes to rating it, maybe this is just an occupational hangover. What I mean to say is that for me personally, I found this book okay only. Like so, nothing mind-blowing, and I wouldn't use any superlatives to describe it. I wouldn't say it's incredible, it's amazing, it's it's okay. You know, I enjoyed it, it was entertaining, but I wouldn't say that it's special. It stands out from all the other translated Japanese crime thrillers or murder mysteries out there, or that I've read, which is an exhaustive list for sure, but I do think I've read more than average. Full spoilers moving forward. This book uses pop psychology to construct the murderer's motive. It sounds logical, but actually it has very little basis in reality. It usually goes something like this, right? There is a child who experienced abuse. So when they grow up, they became a psychopath. It sounds logical, but it's actually not. How many children are there out there who are abused, but they don't grow up to become psychopaths? There is a clear-cut cause and effect that is implied in this story. The evidence here takes the form of drawings. I know that art therapy is a real thing, but interpreting a wobbly smile line as definitive proof that the child is being forced to suppress her emotions. You know, this kind of thing can only be accepted in fiction and not in real life. So like I said, it's pop psychology, and not every child's mental state will be so neatly reflected in their crayon drawings. So the central mystery here is why a man suddenly stopped posting on his blog. I'm just gonna cut to the chase and talk about the story as a whole after you have already pieced it together. When you are reading the book, it's not told in chronological order. There are 3 separate events that happen at different points in time, or like the past, the present, the past. So I'm just going to talk about it as if it were chronologically arranged. There is a little girl at the start of the book. Her name is Naomi, and she killed her mother while under duress. Was her mother abusive towards her? Yes, you can say yes. Because she's just a kid, there was a psychologist, and this child psychologist deemed Naomi fit enough for rehabilitation, and she got it so wrong. So she looked at Naomi's drawings and she said that she could be a good mother next time. So Naomi's protective instincts manifested in motherhood. When she was a mother herself and her son got mistreated by her husband, she got rid of him. And then when a reporter tried to investigate, she got rid of him. When the son grew up, he got married and he started writing on his blog about how happy he is that his wife is expecting he's going to be a father soon. And then his wife started to draw weird stuff. He documented it on his blog, the weird drawings that she drew for him. Naomi helped to deliver the baby because it's her grandchild. The wife died because of Naomi. So Naomi killed her daughter-in-law because she didn't want to relinquish the role of mother. She didn't want to become grandmother. Naomi then raised her grandson to call her mama. The explanation she gave her son is that she doesn't want to confuse the boy. The father loves his dead wife very, very much. So he will bring the boy to the actual mother's grave to like greet her. So the boy is also like getting confused. So this poor grandchild, he's at school drawing weird things, making the teacher feel very concerned. So eventually, the son, he realized what his wife was trying to tell him. And he realized that his mother, Naomi, killed his wife, and that his wife already knew that it was coming. The son still loves his mother very much, but he cannot live with what she did, so he killed himself. Naomi is now raising her grandson all by herself, and she finds herself getting stalked by a weird man who will stalk her all the way to her front door. This man turns out to be the dead reporter's, you remember she killed a reporter in the past? The dead reporter's co-worker who is investigating his death, and he just needed proof. So that's how the book ends. When I went to look at other people's reviews, I went to look at the people who gave it 2 stars, because people who give 2 stars, they will say why. People who give 1 star, they can't be bothered. Yeah, so the people who gave 2 stars, they complained that it was predictable, it was repetitive. Regarding the repetition, yes, I would agree. They kept rehashing as if the reader was stupid or couldn't follow the story very well. It did get tedious. That's all for now. If I were to talk about translated Japanese fiction again, I think I will talk about the ones that are dystopian or speculative fiction, and also the ones that are a bit more serious about historical events next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.